Like we're calling this the Open Excellence Podcast, but I might have to steal your phrase. We're going to call this from now on the Good Pandemic Podcast.
Well, if you have to hashtag pandemic, it might be nice to hashtag it for something good or at least viral.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 1 of the Open Excellence Podcast, where I learn just as much as you do. My name is Rudy Caseres. In the coming weeks, we'll cover all the most important topics in the world of mental health, including new innovations, promising research, and really dive deep into issues that are often misunderstood or underreported. And what better way to launch this podcast than to break down what exactly is Open Excellence? What is the organization's mission, its values, its key players, and its goals for the future? And while the entire world is in a state of transition, Open Excellence is currently experiencing a transition of its own, which we'll get into soon enough. Now, I've only been involved with Open Excellence since last November, and to be honest, I didn't know a whole lot about the organization, other than that its then CEO, Gina Nickel, who is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, was doing amazing work there. So it was great learning so much from some of the leading voices who have helped shape what Open Excellence stands for. We're going to be talking with 3 of the most influential leaders, voices, heroes of Open Excellence, Dr. Sandra Steingard, Dr. Christopher Gordon, and Keris Myrick, who is someone who I've admired for years and am always happy to speak with. We're going to learn about the early days of Open Excellence. We're going to hear more about some of the other leading voices who have helped establish and build what Open Excellence is today. We're also going to learn about what their hopes are for the future. And then we'll wrap it up with my final thoughts and what I've learned about our topic. So, without further ado, let's get into it.
I'm Sandra Steingard, and I'm currently chair of the board of the foundation.
My name is Christopher Gordon, and I'm the medical director emeritus of Advocates, dedicated to the principle that everybody deserves a full, messy life of their own design if they have the right supports.
I'm Keris Myrick, and I'm currently serving in the role of vice president on the board of Open Excellence.
Now, what do these 3 individuals have in common, you might ask? Well, they represent the past, present, and future of Open Excellence, and I asked them all the same questions and got some great responses. The first is to have them all explain exactly what is Open Excellence. But before I get into their answers, I wanted to explain the official answer of what exactly is Open Excellence. So here it is. From their website, openexcellence.org, it says, "Hope is here. We are in the midst of a global mental health crisis. At Open Excellence, we fund independent research and innovative programs that are revolutionizing mental health outcomes. Join us on our mission to create mental health care excellence for all. We can be better together. Our community of people with lived experience, philanthropists, scientists, innovators, and care providers are committed to revolutionizing mental health outcomes. We invite you to join our mission to create better mental health care for all." There is a donate link, which I hope you all take part in. And the outcome, healthy humanity. This is what we are creating together. Will you join us? Well, I certainly have. So there you have it, straight from the Open Excellence website itself. But let's hear from our 3 guests. Say like I'm just a stranger on the street. How would you explain what exactly is Open Excellence?
Well, it's a foundation that came together to try to bring together philanthropy with novel and progressive ideas in mental health. The problem that we face is that those of us who think there are some fundamental flaws in the way that the mental health system is structured and the way research is funded have a hard time getting attention and researchers who are interested in this area have a hard time getting money because the people who control what gets funded don't necessarily share the values of a place like Open Excellence. So the idea is to try to bring together people with money, philanthropists, and to be able to develop new ideas and develop programs that can then be promoted, and develop research that can then provide an evidence base that would give more credence to some of these sort of so-called alternative kinds of ideas.
So that's Dr. Sandra Steingard's response to the question, what exactly is open excellence? But what does Keris Myrick have to say?
Wow. So you start with it should be an easy question. And I'll say I don't know that I've had my elevator speech perfected about open excellence. So the easiest way I know how to explain it, I think most people think of it as it's a nonprofit. Oh, it's an advocacy group. Oh, it's a foundation. Well, what is it really? And I think that's what you're asking. And I haven't been on the inner circle that long. That's why I say I don't have my elevator speech down to riding in a very short elevator, but I guess we're going to in a very long elevator in a very tall building at a very slow speed. So here's how I'm going to define it to you, is that open excellence really is a place to bring change makers and idea makers together with foundation and funding money. So it functions like a foundation, but it's like a bank of little banks, meaning, I can go to that little bank because that little bank, that little funding pile, which is usually not too little, is going to fund something that I think will really reform the mental health system for people who are in most need. So instead of saying we're going to fund everything in life, we really are helping people fund, I think, more projects and research that advance the field in mental health reform, especially for those in most need. So you'll find different projects that people can be involved in and or raise money for and or donate to, and or if you're a foundation or philanthropist, say, yeah, that's where I want to stick my money. So that's the foundation, the money arm of it. And it does have a educational arm and an advocacy arm as well. So that's my elevator speech. Top floor. That's it.
Now let's get Dr. Christopher Gordon's response.
It's a clearinghouse for unbiased research on psychiatric distress and its treatment. It's a clearinghouse that's free of the influence of the psychopharmaceutical industry. It's an incubator for progressive practices that would have difficulty obtaining mainstream support for research and adaptation and bringing these practices to scale. For example, Open Excellence led the way in bringing the practice of open dialogue from Scandinavia to the United States. It has been a primary promoter of the Hearing Voices Network. It's been a very strong supporter for the voices of peers in all aspects of psychiatric care. It has been an extraordinarily forward-thinking entity in promoting nutritional alternatives to psychopharmaceuticals. So that would be one answer.
I then asked each guest how exactly did they first get involved with Open Excellence.
It was either Gina or Bob Whitaker, maybe. Yeah, I think, actually, there was a conference at Yale University. I was asked to be a speaker. I knew about the foundation tangentially through Bob Whitaker. So I came to participate. I think it was a keynote, and I was on a panel. And I actually sat in on one of their board meetings when... trying to think who was the board chair at that time. I can see him, but I can't think of his name. It was the person who's the head of World Federation for Mental Health. I think that's what he does. No. He does something else. He does IAMHL. My bad. IAMHL, the International Institute for Mental Health Leadership. He was the board chair. I think Bob Whitaker was there. Gina, Bob, Chris Gordon. I think that's when I first met Christopher Gordon, Dr. Gordon. And that's when I saw, and Dr. Healy from the UK, David Healy, Courtney Harding. I was like floored to be on a stage with like the Dr. Courtney Harding. So it was like these amazing people who had really, Gail Hornstein, who had written a book about people in psychiatric hospitals and how there wasn't an understanding of what their abilities were. Agnes's Jacket was her book. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like with all of these luminaries who are really, they're not radical. They're really talking about, okay, well, we got meds, we got beds, but what don't we have? What do we need? What really helps people kind of live lives that they want to lead? And that's how I got introduced to it. And I think I was still in LA, and then I went to work for the federal government, where you're not really allowed to have a lot of involvement in stuff. You kind of have to do it sort of tangentially or kind of on the periphery. And then when I came back to Los Angeles, I had more ability to kind of be and remain connected.
Yeah, you basically listed every single guest of our previous podcast.
Yeah, you're hanging out with good people.
I joined the board in, I believe it was the spring of 2012. I read Anatomy of an Epidemic by Robert Whitaker and emailed him to thank him for the book. I thought it was interesting. And that email led to a pretty extensive correspondence. I'm a psychiatrist, and although I had been increasingly concerned about the impact of the pharmaceutical industry on the practice of psychiatry, there were issues brought up in anatomy that were pretty troubling for me, specifically this issue about whether long-term use of medications, and for me it was specific to the antipsychotic drugs, worsened outcome, because I had been working in community mental health for many years and thought that optimal care involved keeping people on medications for the long term to prevent relapse. So this book raised this question about whether in fact that was harmful, more harmful than beneficial. While I couldn't take that book to be definitive, I thought it was, the claims were substantiated enough that I needed to do more research. So this led to a lot of correspondence with Robert Whitaker and some writing on the topic. And then he invited me to blog on his website. And through that, I learned, as we got to know each other and I was involved, I heard about the development of the foundation, and they got to know me through my writing, and I was invited to join the board. And that was I believe it was a year after I read Anatomy of an Epidemic.
That's interesting. You're not the only one that I've heard that from.
I'm well aware. No, I agree. I think it set something off, and a lot of people, I mean, not all of them were drawn to look into this more, some of whom were very critical of the book, but those of us who felt that there was something to this were quite moved, and that is the origin story of Open Excellence.
I've been affiliated with the organization Open Excellence pretty much since its inception. I had the great honor to be, or actually my company had the honor of being the first recipient of a grant from Open Excellence to attempt to adapt and replicate the practice of open dialogue in the United States. And so I've been a member of the Open Excellence family for a number of years.
I then asked Dr. Christopher Gordon and Dr. Sandra Steingard, who've been involved since the very beginning, what have been their highlights and who have been their heroes who have helped make Open Excellence, well, excellent.
We just lost a giant in our field, Bill Anthony, who just died last week. Was some people describe him as the father of the recovery movement. He was a visionary who basically founded the idea of psychiatric rehabilitation, psychosocial rehabilitation, and emphasized the idea of building lives worth living, rather than being focused on symptom suppression. He was a giant and an early, very important person in open excellence. Another person who was on our board for many years and who just retired from the board is Courtney Harding, another giant in the field of looking at potential for recovery, even from the most distressing and apparently chronic conditions. In the younger generation, our current chairman of the board, Sandra Steingard, is a wonderful psychiatrist from the University of Vermont, an organization similar to Advocates. Sandy has been a leading voice in the field of critical psychiatry. She's brilliant and incredibly imaginative. Gina Nickel, who was our executive director for a number of years, was a wonderful visionary. She was a great leader.
I also, influenced by Anatomy of an Epidemic, I became very interested in open dialogue and have been studying that and working in my agency in the state where I live to begin to implement it. But it's been a synergy with my work with the foundation, because the foundation has been one of the largest funders of developing programs and research in open dialogue and related practices. So that's certainly a highlight, to be able to be a part of that and see that develop in the United States and internationally. I have been very pleased to see the development of Hearing Voices Network. That was something that I learned about through my work with Open Excellence, and it's been gratifying to see that grow and develop and spread around the country. Getting to meet people, the members of the foundation are really wonderful people, and the board's included some leaders in the field, so it's been quite an opportunity for me to meet people like Courtney Harding and David Healy and a number of other people that have been really instrumental in the development of the foundation. One person who I got to meet through Open Excellence is Bill Anthony. And I wanted to mention his name because he recently died. And he was someone who had been working in this field for a very long time, working, bringing attention to the idea that many people who go through extreme states recover. And that was a novel concept. And Bill worked in this area for a very long time. It really was a highlight for me to get to know him and to count him as a friend. He's just a lovely person. He did really good work, and particularly because we lost him, I did want to honor him and acknowledge that as one of the real highlights for my time with Open Excellence.
As for Keris Myrick, who's only been involved with Open Excellence until fairly recently, I wanted to learn more about what makes Open Excellence special, and also provide more context to that good pandemic line we used in the beginning of the show.
I'm really hoping that we become this is where kind of a pandemic of mental health reform by some of these people would be like, amazing. That's a good pandemic. That's good viral. That's what you want to go viral, such that, we're not so closed off or cloistered from the rest of, I would say, mainstream, because that's what also is going to help mainstream transform as well. It's not like we're pushing against it. We're all within it in some way or another, and helping to shape what the future can look like. And it is hard to do on a massive, massive level. So we do need, organizations like Open Excellence to help bring together people who sometimes, if I'm talking about something in quote unquote the mainstream, I'm trying to think of like peer respite. When I used to talk about peer respite, was like, oh yeah, no, and you feel kind of like an outsider, like you're pushing against the wind. But you come to Open Excellence, and it's like everybody embraces you because you're all now talking the same language. We're not pushing against something. So again, I hope we're able to touch and reach more people so that more of us are kind of walking in the same direction rather than feeling as if somehow we're pushing against something. I think it is viral. There's so many people out there that are really trying to do this work across the world, not just in the US, but in the UK and Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in India, and in South America. I mean, this is an international movement, and the more that we can find ways to get connected, the less kind of we feel, first of all, alone, or that we have to have like special wings or a special handshake or something. And then it becomes less of a, oh, well, that's the minority view, or there are just a few people who think like that. No, there are a lot of people who are really working in this area, developing research agendas, getting outcomes that I think even in the mainstream, people want to see these same outcomes. It's like we all want the same thing. The question is, how do we get there? And I think open excellence and working with all of these different researchers on these projects are providing that pathway, the light on the pathway to help people get there. I think you're bringing up some really, really good points that, this is why I like doing this kind of work, because when you do government work or when you do other work that is very, I'll say heavy system based or audit based or, kind of that kind of thing, very heavy policy based, you don't have the freedom that I think organizations that like Open Excellence provide to researchers who want to see, hey, will this thing work? Funding sometimes doesn't allow us to do that. We always want to follow rules and regulations about privacy and informed consent. I mean, it's not like it's a free for all. We could do whatever we want, but indeed, it gives people more flexibility to try some of these things and advance some of these things. Especially if they're taken from other countries to the US or vice versa, that that's the cool thing about this kind of work. There's a level of freedom and exploration and innovation and creativity that is not just talked about and cherished, and they're passionate about it, and that's what we want to do, but we're walking that talk. And even how we fund things and how we think about, well, is this a fit for the ethos of who we are? If it's not a fit, then thank you for the money, but yeah, I don't think so. Right? Because we don't want to like be walking over that edge of where our values are, like scope creep or whatever they call that. I think it's scope creep, mission creep. I think this is such an interesting time because, like you said, everybody's calling, thinking there's going to be or stating there's going to be a mental health tsunami, and, we're never going to be able to take care of all of these people or support all of these people that will be experiencing. And I would say, the trauma of this long-term, long-time global event. This is not, and I'm in California, I'm in Los Angeles, so things here would generally be around fires or earthquakes, and they would be localized to a particular area of LA or California if it stretches outside of LA. But this is like California. Nope, it's New York. Nope, it's the United States. Nope, it's it's a huge thing, and we're all going to be struggling here with the physical distancing and no social, different types of social connection, and some people may not have the equipment or tools to do the social connection, which is life-giving. Like social connection is a critical life thing. And if you don't have it, you're not going to do well. But here's the cool thing, even though it's like a downturn in the economy, and I think that might be worrying people, especially people in the philanthropy world, I think the cool thing about now is that, and about Open Excellence is that if there is any time to fund anything around helping the public, mental health centers cannot do it themselves. public mental health cannot do it. We're really going to need really new and inventive things to meet people where they are to help them through this traumatic time, especially as it starts to, wind down. And, those are when the effects will kind of ramp up as well. That a philanthropist can say, oh my gosh, I want to help my community. And this is how I want to help my community to weather this storm. I want to create a fund. That's what the philanthropists do, so that they create a fund to support the work that may help either their community or their state to do things that the public mental health and or commercial or private side won't be able to do, can't do, and may not able to do well. So I think those are kind of two things to think about of what Open Excellence has the opportunity and ability to do, because it's that type of organization, that type of foundation.
So far, we've learned about how great Open Excellence is and the amazing things that it does, the great people who are involved in it. But how do we bring in new people, the next generation, if you will?
I mean, if I had a clear answer to that, it would be really helpful.
Yeah, we'd be really in high gear.
I think there's a lot of people that encounter the mental health care system and come away less than satisfied. And so part of what we can do is to try to connect to them and try to introduce them to some of the ideas that we have, that people have developed. And that seems to me one way to promote this. There's such a problem because there's so much money coming from industries that benefit from the current narrative. And in this way, I'm talking about primarily about the pharmaceutical industry and the power that they have through their huge financial resources is just, it's a bit overwhelming. So they create this narrative that I don't think is as based in science as they that many people have come to believe, namely that most of the conditions, the struggles that people experience are best understood as diseases of the brain and, are best approached in a very kind of more stricter medical model than that would say, you go through some diagnostic process and find the problem and often center drugs as the appropriate treatment. It's clear why pharmaceutical industries are going to benefit from that narrative. But many of us have come to believe that it's just not as helpful as people think. And there's taking a much broader perspective can be helpful. Understanding trauma, understanding social factors, understanding cultural factors, understanding poverty, understanding the role of racism in people's struggles in life are, I think, likely to be more productive in helping people find a path through the difficulties that they encounter.
And lastly, their hopes for the future.
I hope that Open Excellence continues to thrive and finds robust support for its mission. Unfortunately, the world is in the grips of a world-shaking challenge in the pandemic, which makes all philanthropic endeavors that are not directly related to the pandemic and makes life difficult for those entities. So my hope is that Open Excellence continues to identify philanthropic support to pursue its extraordinarily important mission.
What would I say for the public? I mean, I think that I think what I'm hoping is that we can continue to be a presence in the larger conversation about how to help people who have these struggles in life that we've come to call mental illness, that we can continue to be a convener of people who have different ideas about how to talk about this, that we can continue to fund novel ideas, perhaps one thing that I didn't mention in terms of a target, it's not so much a target audience, but something that I think we've done and want to continue to grow is to develop the group of people with lived experience who are researchers, who are working with others. This is part of what the Hearing Voices Network is, but it goes really beyond that. And for me, one of the biggest shifts in my own career has been to truly appreciate the value of people who have themselves had these struggles and now come back and offer that to help not only help others, but even help shape the nature of the questions we ask in doing research or developing programs. That's something that I hope we continue to grow and can be a leader in supporting people in that area who often have tremendous difficulty getting funding for their research.
I think there is no way in this time, and it's existed before, but I think this time has really sort of opened the chasm around racism in the United States in particular, but certainly I think other countries are starting to grapple with their own issues of racism. And I would hope that as we look at the emotional well-being of people, that we also look at for open excellence to be able to elicit and solicit, if you will, funders and philanthropists who are interested in helping the trauma that people of color, and particularly in the United States, Black and Native Americans have experienced because of racism, such that we can eliminate a lot of that and provide culturally competent, relevant, aligned support services in the community developed by the people that will help the people. I would love to see that. I don't know anybody who's doing that. I would love to see that. And I think we have the opportunity to do that. And again, with other partners, there's smaller groups that are doing it, but not in the same way that Open Excellence does. So I'm hoping that's one thing that we could see, and that we're able to grow actually more researchers with lived experience who are either able to go on and get their PhD, or maybe you don't need your PhD to do research. You're just doing co-design, not just, but you're doing co-design, co-development, and research with a group of folks who are doing this work. Those are some areas where I would love to see us continue to move forward to. And of course, to be like have a gazillion $1 million and a gazillion zillion projects that are well funded and out there and that were known by many, many, many more people.
Well, this podcast will do 1% of that.
I'll retweet it to my little group of people.
Awesome. Yes. If we raise $1 as a result of this podcast, then
we've done our job.
We've done it.
Yeah.
As you may know, Open Excellence is currently on the search for a CEO. Have you put in your application yet?
Keris Myrick? No, she has not. Keris Myrick has a job. Thank you very much. No, I have not. I've been a CEO before, so let's just cut to the chase. I've been a CEO before. I don't know if I want to be a CEO again. It is a lot of work, of which I really enjoyed it. I learned so much, and I think at this time, this is the way that I'm supposed to be participating with Open Excellence and helping Open Excellence, not as the CEO, but as a board member and as a contributor. I think that's what I'm called to do at the moment. But thank you.
Yeah,
But
and like if I keep playing my cards right, maybe someday I'll be CEO of Open Excellence.
you know what? The world is filled with possibilities, and maybe we would even have more positions in which we could groom people and have a succession plan so that we're grooming people and bringing them in to all different roles. I mean, mental health is not just about, or behavioral health. Well, no, we'll say mental health. I don't like behavioral health. Mental health isn't just about providing the service. Somebody has to run the organization. Somebody has to do the marketing. Somebody has to, raise the money. Somebody has to look at the policies and the procedures. Drudgery, but it does have to be done. And I think we should be grooming, again, people with lived experience, people of color, people who are generally underserved, underrepresented, under or unemployed, to find home in this work. And if open excellence can be that, sort of, um, what do you call it? Something ground. I totally lost my word. Oh gosh. So if open excellence can actually be the ground in which we cultivate people and groom people to move up into leadership positions of open excellence or elsewhere, well, that'd be kind of cool too. We should put that on the 10-year plan.
Yes, 2030 is my year.
There you go. You better get your application ready.
Keris Myrick, I virtually shake your hand because I'll probably never be able to shake anyone's hand in real life again. So,
not for a while, and not without a couple pairs of gloves on. But thank you. I virtually shake your hand, and I give you an air hug, fist pump, elbow bump. And thank you for doing the podcast and having me as a guest.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you again, and you're welcome. And hopefully soon enough, the only thing that you have to worry about in LA is the fireworks and the earthquakes and the fires.
Yep, that would be a lot easier than this stuff.
That's going to do it for episode 1 of the Open Excellence podcast. I hope you all enjoy this format. We're in for the long haul. If you like what you hear, please give a good review. 5 stars, if you will, on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much to Keris Myrick, Dr. Christopher Gordon, and Dr. Sandra Steingard for giving me their time to talk about open excellence and educate me, and all of you. I hope you learned just as much as I did, and I hope you'll continue learning with me. Until next time, I'm Rudy Caseres, your host. This is the Open Excellence Podcast.